You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Jim for SDC International Shipping. As always, thank you for joining me for today's podcast episode. So today I am using AI, doing a little bit of what they call deep search, and I'm gathering information that's very interesting. I mean, here we are, we're in the third month of 2025 already. And I say already because it feels like it was just New Year's, just about 6 weeks ago. That's the way it feels to me anyway, and we're already in the third month of the year. The first quarter, before you know it, will be over. I say all that because one of the things that I noticed, and maybe AI is changing the game a little bit, is that they already have surveys out about 2025. And so usually I would look at what they were talking about the last quarter of 2024, and I wouldn't have 2025 information available to me until, let's say, 4 months into the new year. But we're just starting month number 3 now. I'm making this recording in the first week of March. And so as I'm looking through this information, I found some interesting things here. So for example, I want to just share some of this with you. I was examining the happiness rating according to Expats. This survey was taken about 5 weeks ago. And now I'm not sure of the size, the sample size they took or not of expats, but they looked at the happiness level in 4 very popular countries that Americans moved to. Number 1 was Mexico. The happiness level there was rated at 90%. And one of the key factors, the appealing factors, were affordability, local friendliness, and culture. Number 2, right behind Mexico, was Spain with a happiness level of 88%. That was based on quality of life, leisure options, and healthcare. Number 3 was Panama, which didn't really surprise me, and ease of settling in and housing affordability were the key appealing factors there. So if I look at the top 3 there, of course, English is spoken in Mexico and Spain as well as Panama, English, of course, being a popular language. These are the first 3 out of 5. The next 2, Canada and the UK, they speak English. But when you're looking at the overall ranking of places to move to based on happiness alone, then they came, Mexico, Spain, and Panama came 1, 2, and 3, came up 1, 2, and 3 here in early 2025. Whereas if you look at the overall ranking of where people are moving to, Canada, which came in number 4, is ranked 27 on the list. They have a happiness rating of 71%. And the UK came up as 32nd out of 53 with a 75% happiness level. Now, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. And I know usually when they do these surveys, they're looking at expat communities. So these are specific communities of people. I'm sure that if you did a survey in certain communities, the happiness level would be, very low based on things like income, and certain areas are, of course, very dangerous. It doesn't matter what type of country we're talking about. We can be talking about here in the United States. It doesn't matter what state you're talking about. There's always going to be places within that state that you don't go to after dark. I know there's certain places where I grew up back in New Jersey where the Uber drivers, the taxis, no one will go in there after dark because the crime is so bad. They don't even like going there in the day, but at nighttime, forget about it. And so I was looking through this information about where people are in 2025. And we've been doing this podcast. This is the 3rd year now, and we've looked at many of these countries before: Mexico, Spain, Panama, Canada, and the UK. And, recently, well, Mexico and Panama have been in our news, of course. They've talked about the Panama Canal in recent weeks. We've talked about tariffs on Mexico, the border, that type of thing. One of the top concerns that people have who are considering moving to Mexico has to do with safety and security. And so depending on where you go, again, you have to look at it this way. It's easy just to look at an area or a state or a country and just give a blanket estimation of what the people are like, what the job opportunities are like. But there's just too many other factors that you have to figure in overall. And so that's why I like the fact that these are expats being interviewed who are living in expat communities. So if you're living in an expat community in Mexico, then they're saying that it's very affordable. People there are very, very friendly, and the culture there is really great. And the people that I've talked to who live there currently, I haven't spoken to them so far yet in 2025, but in the last few years, they were saying that they were taking advantage of local shopping, local vendors, local businesses. They said that's where you really save the money. You don't save the money by going to a Costco in Mexico or by ordering Amazon in Mexico. Then you're paying basically what you're paying everywhere else. Maybe it's a little cheaper, but it's not so cheap that it really makes a difference. And it's the same thing with a lot of things. If you buy from local businesses, local butchers, local food stores, local vendors, you're going to pay less money in places like Mexico and Panama. And I would, of course, that doesn't work here in the United States. Usually the local vendors, maybe it does a little bit. I guess I should say it does a little bit, especially with food. A little bit. It's not a huge difference. Okay, so one of the things that they said also, which has changed, is that 56% of expats moving in 2025 who've just moved cited that adventure and new experiences were very high as far as motivators go. So that's from a website called Savvy Nomad. Now, the immigration processes, things that include things like visa requirements, residency permits, those are among the top topics that are discussed on the forums right now because of the complexities and the laws are changing. So the Internations survey, for example, which was just taken, notes that bureaucratic challenges in countries like Germany have resulted in Germany ranking 53rd for ease of settling in, all the way at the bottom, whereas Mexico and Spain offer a relatively much smoother process. And then you can look at other surveys taken by publications like Travel and Leisure, and they highlight the lack of digital nomad visas in some countries, require work permits or temporary visas in order to get there. So the digital nomad visa, excuse me, in a lot of ways, I don't want to call it a shortcut because if you are working digitally online, providing online services, or just working remotely as a remote worker, you can fit into that digital nomad visa category. And more countries are going to be rolling these visas out going forward. But there's just a focus on that right now, more so than there's been in the past. And certain countries, Germany, it looks like one of them, are just not really keeping up with that. I guess they're not looking for more people to be moving into their country. They also are one of those countries that has had a lot of problems with immigration. Healthcare and insurance are up there also. Let me look at these motivators. Immigration and legal aspects was all the way at the top, and under that is where we talk about visa requirements, residency permits, and those are items that are not issues when we're talking about Mexico, Spain, Panama. Even though the happiness level, the top 5, Portugal hasn't broke into it, which they had in the past. I know that they also have a digital nomad type of visa that they make available. But next underneath that was healthcare and insurance. Most expats are not kids, so to speak, and 79% of them this year have rated medical care as a top factor. People here in the United States, of course, are facing and have been facing high healthcare costs, and a lot of them are drawn to countries now in Asia, or considering countries like Taiwan, which has a 93% satisfaction with healthcare availability. I mean, that's great. Ecuador, for affordable healthcare, also ranks very high, according to Internation's Expat Insider, William Russell. And another survey, which is about a year and a half old, noted that 86% feel that their concerns are less addressed by the U.S. government, and highlighting that healthcare is just such a major factor, and they don't feel that the government is really doing anything to alleviate those costs. Now, we have a new government now as of 2025, so maybe that will change going forward. As I said, this last one was a survey going back about a year and a half ago. Cost of living and financial planning, in my mind, that would be number one when it comes to relocating. But according to recent surveys now, that is number three. And I guess it makes sense to put visas number one, because if you find a place that you really enjoy, but you don't meet the visa requirements, then, it's for naught. And the older you get, maybe the more concerned you are with healthcare and insurance. You don't want to be bankrupted by illness or something like that, or emergency healthcare needs. That's up there. Thank God, a lot of the people I know haven't had any real health issues in years. And I know that it's kind of like having a fire extinguisher in your house. If someone's ever had a fire in their home before, I know people that had their homes catch on fire with varying degrees of damage. From that point on, they never thought about not having a fire extinguisher ready to go in their homes going forward. That experience changed them for life. Now, insurance, I've seen it the same way. People have lost a lot due to unforeseen catastrophic issues, and families that have been affected by that in the past, they put healthcare and healthcare insurance all the way at the top. Here in the state of Florida, where I'm making this recording, it's an issue. It really is. People have had their homes, for example, leveled by hurricanes, and the insurance does not offer enough, monetarily speaking, to replace everything that was lost, only a fraction of it. Insurance is a big deal. It reaches crisis points, actually. In certain countries, I heard them say that even with state-sponsored, I guess you would call it, insurance, I guess if you go to the UK, for those who've been born and raised in the UK, they've had that all their lives, and yet I've heard some of them say that there were times when something like a surgery was needed, and they opted for private insurance in that case, or a different type of insurance so that they didn't have to wait as long. Because the lines are quite long for medical care in a lot of these situations. Okay, not to bog down with that. So cost of living, countries like Mexico and Thailand are super popular right now due to lower cost of living. 48% of expats are moving for this reason. Financial planning, including U.S. tax obligations, is critical, and 69% of the expats surveyed said that they feel they shouldn't pay any taxes at all if they're living abroad. Interesting. I understand why, and a lot of times when people are leaving the country, they don't consult accountants, and they're not even aware that they have a tax liability, or they believe their tax liability is lower than it actually is, and then issues come up and they get into trouble. So consulting an accountant is something you should definitely do if you're going to move overseas, especially an expat educated accountant, and possibly even an attorney that understands the entire expat situation based on the particular country that you're going to. One of the easiest countries to get information on is the UK, because so many people come from the UK to the United States and from the United States to the UK. That process, there's a lot of information available about it out there, so you can take advantage of that. There's expat groups online, Facebook, Reddit, other places where you can get more information. Okay, next we have job and career considerations. So job opportunities and work culture are very important to working age American expats. Now, according to the survey taken several weeks ago, 76% value job opportunities all the way at the top, with countries like Germany and the UK as being the most popular choices for career prospects. Now, what's interesting about this is whatever area that you focus on, for example, maybe you're focusing on job and career considerations, it seems like the pros and the cons of each focus differ. So let's just say, for example, you're thinking about making money as the primary reason of relocating. And that can be true of relocating in the United States as well as relocating abroad. Well, let's just take the US, for example. If you're going to work or have a business in a major city where the cost of living is higher, but so is the income, well, then you're going to have to put up with some other issues maybe that aren't going to be as high as far as rankings go. In other words, local friendliness usually isn't very high up on the scale in a busy metropolitan area. Whereas when you get into the suburbs or some of those other places that are less populated, local friendliness, of course, then is more noticeable. Affordability, culture, all those things go up the scale, but other things like maybe income go down. So, there's a mixture of things. I noticed, especially here and during the last 25 years in the United States, some of the areas that had very poor prospects as far as job opportunities go were built up not by people building new companies here in the different states, but more or less people taking their money from places like California and New York and then moving into those states and bringing their money with them. And then came the building of infrastructure and new businesses rising up and so on. So going way back, New York City, one of the first major cities in the United States, was built. And then from there, after the crowding, people moved to other neighboring states, bringing their income and business with them. And so the story goes. But right now, again, looking at the different appeal factors, what's appealing for one person, maybe they want to focus on quality of life because job opportunities are not the primary driver anymore. If job opportunities are the primary driver, well, then maybe you're going to have to be in a location where the housing prices are a little bit higher and so on. But if you're in that retirement group and you've already made your money, or you're a digital nomad and you're traveling light, then there's quite a few options out there today outside of the United States that are, let's just say, reachable. What I mean by that is you're not going to have to jump through hoops or hurdles, however you want to put it, to get your visa requirements, the I's dotted and the T's crossed, or the residency permits. And so countries are making it easier than ever, and I think that's going to continue to be this way as more and more countries want people to come in, they want more business, they want to build financially. It's a focus around the world right now. I know the United States has just passed certain bills or laws that enable other countries to come in and to build without having to pay any tariffs at all. I believe Honda is here now, that one of the world's biggest chip maker is going to be building in Arizona. And so even the United States is focusing on this again. But this has been a focus in Europe probably the last 4 or 5 years that's really stuck out to me. So for job opportunities, Germany is way up there. For the digital nomad side, the countries like Spain, Mexico have very flexible visa options. But there are some challenges with language barriers, particularly in non-English speaking countries. And if the work-life balance is important, which it is, I think even if you're not primarily focused on that, work-life balance is just part of having a better life. Other topics include cultural adaptation, with 74% of those surveyed, again, we're just talking about this year, several weeks ago, valuing local friendliness very high up there as one of the most important factors to consider, along with education for children. All of those things are important if you're raising a family. Safety and security are also top concerns, with 82% citing it as crucial, driven by U.S. crime rates. And this was a survey, another recent survey taken by the Outbound Investment Group. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm just sharing with you all this information that I've just come across myself. A lot of this is new to me as I'm reading it to you, so we're both learning it at the same time. Housing options and real estate are discussed in forums, and noting the focus on property costs in the most popular destinations. Well, one thing that you can say for sure is the more popular a destination is, the more you're going to pay going forward for housing, whether you buy or rent. And that's one of the issues that the Mexican people are citing there, that a lot of them are no longer able to remain in areas that they grew up in because the local expat communities have grown so quickly that they've driven the prices of real estate up. They've driven the prices of everything up, because when you have more people, regardless of why the people are there, then you have to invest in things like infrastructure. And with the increase and the updating of infrastructure comes all of the costs associated with it. How do you recoup those costs? Well, it's done so in pricing and taxes and all of that. Everything becomes more and more expensive. If you want to see examples of that here in the United States, there's plenty of states that you can look at going way back, all the way up into modern times, where Florida used to be a very inexpensive state where people would retire to, and that retirement income would last them the rest of their lives. And now we're at a point today where people are leaving the state of Florida because the cost of insurance and housing is so high now that they're not able to afford to remain here for the rest of their lives, with people living longer. So, back in the day, you had people passing on, unfortunately, in their 60s and early 70s, and today you have people reaching up to their upwards of 80s and 90s. That extra decade or two can make quite an impact on your finances if you're no longer earning any income. Just think about how much savings that you would have to have in the bank to live at your current lifestyle for 10 or 20 years without any income at all. That means new cars, new air conditionings, housing, roof, insurances, all of that. Money going out without any money coming in besides Social Security. So it's an issue, definitely. Times have changed. We're not living in the easiest of times. Not everybody is doing poorly, but we're seeing more and more people in that place where they're looking to relocate, citing some of the things we talked about in today's episode. So when you do get to that point where you're actually considering making the leap, don't forget to reach out and connect with us at SDC International Shipping. You can go online. We have lots of articles that we upload every month. We keep up with all of the changes, what's happening in the world of international moving. We have a moving blog where you can read a little bit about different countries, customs, packing, insurances, a lot of different things, storage. It's all available at sdcinternationalshipping.com. We also have an 800 number that you can call and speak with a relocation expert. You can get an estimate. You can fill out the form online. All of it's there at sdcinternationalshipping.com. Anyway, this is Jim. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.